listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Great Scott, boy!
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be
Sean.
Derek.
And in this episode, we'll be doing a discussion of the new 2015 remake of Poltergeist. It just hit theaters this past weekend. I should mention it was in 3D, so that's a big selling point of it, Poltergeist 3D. But before that, we'll get into a little bit of news and a little bit of site news before we get to talk about Poltergeist. So just some of the news to start out the podcast. I know on the site before I'd done a post about what the Friday the 13th series should do next, because there was a little bit of ambiguity a while back about where the franchise is going. There was a couple years ago there was talk that they're going to make a found footage Friday the 13th back during the height of Paranormal Activity and those movies all being the rage. And this newest movie will not be a found footage film. It will not be a sequel to the 2009, I guess it was a reboot of the franchise. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was kind of a reboot remake. So it's not going to be a sequel to that. And they've hinted that it could have a time shift to take place in the 1980s. And this was reported from Bloody Disgusting. And the director for this movie is going to be the Signal and VHS director, David Bruckner. And like I said, it's not going to be a sequel to the 2009 version, which I thought was, as far as the Platinum Dune stuff goes, so the remake of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street, that was probably their worst one. Yeah, it wasn't good. The Friday the 13th sequel from 2009, I didn't think it was bad. I didn't really think it was good. I mean, it was kind of in line with a lot of the mid-franchise movies that came out in the 80s.
Yeah, it was a serviceable Friday the 13th movie, and it was, it was fine. It was nice to go to the theaters and see another one after just such a long hiatus.
I do think for this series, like if they shift the time frame back to the 80s, that could be cool. Depending on how they approach it.
Set it in the 30s. You know what I mean?
That would actually be really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of horror movies don't really do that. They're always set, more in this era.
There's so much more potential there.
Yeah, it'd actually be really interesting if they did it.
I think there was like a Bonnie and Clyde versus vampires or something. I never saw, but something like that. By the way, William, did that article mention anything about that Friday the 13th TV show?
No, it was just about the movie.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what, if both those go ahead at the same time. Not that I think they should try to make a shared universe or whatever, but, every time there's a TV show, if a TV show is coming out at the same time and a movie after being several years since the last one, people are going to draw comparisons and think, oh, is this based off the show or the movie? But wouldn't be a bad idea to kind of get those things ready together, launch one 6 months after the other or something.
Well, it's kind of a funny thing, too, though, now. You're going to get generations of people, if, like, say the show came out first, they would just know of the show. They wouldn't know of the previous movies, you know?
Yeah, and one other tidbit of information that was in that article was that the producer of the movie, Brad Ford, said that they had hoped to expand somewhat on Jason's mythos and take the movie back to the summer camp. The second part, that's fine. I think, it makes sense to have it at the summer camp. Mm-hmm. The first part of that, going into Jason's mythos, I don't think you really need to rehash his story more.
I know.
And you definitely don't want a scene of a chubby blonde-headed kid sitting outside while like Love Hurt plays and his mom's stripping.
Yes,
we really don't need to go back to anything like that.
So to reference the Rob Zombie Halloween film, it's just these classic movie monsters, the killers like Jason, Freddy, Michael. I don't think they need a lot of backstory. I think you just need a stylistically done movie that has characters you can at least somewhat identify with, and just cool kills, good visuals, and solid soundtrack and just some memorable shots. Aside from that, going into the backstories, I don't think you gain too much by doing that.
Yeah, sometimes that kind of drags the movie down a little bit. I think not just because it Not just because it just demystifies it, but it slows it down because flashbacks in movies to me always slow things down. Because it's like, okay, this isn't what's going on now. Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, like it should just. I feel like that takes too time. Like you look at these movies, like the most I think these movies should last is like maybe an hour and 20 minutes. So you add that in, it just eats up, kill time or just horror time because you're having to explain all this stuff. And it's like just give like a 2-minute brief summarization of it, like they did in the second Friday 13th or the second or third. I can't remember. They're talking about like how he watched his mom die and stuff.
Yeah. And a little throwaway line or whatever. That's
like all you need to do and just go with it. Going back and doing all the, spending 20, 30 minutes on it is kind of unnecessary because I think it takes away from what that horror movie is supposed to be. It should be kind of quick and just.
And people want to see Jason. They want to see the killer. So when you're showing this backstory that most people don't care about, you're not getting the killers. You're getting their beginnings or whatever. But they want to see them on screen as much time as possible, typically.
Yeah, and the only exception I'll give them on giving Jason a backstory is that they followed through from the original plans from the 80s and 90s to have him be resurrected by the Necronomicon and tied into the Evil Dead franchise since that's coming back as a TV show, and then actually make the movie of Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, which I doubt would actually happen, but
or we could just get one episode of the new series.
Yeah,
he goes to the Crystal Lake.
Well, I think now, too, though, like, since all three franchises, like, obviously Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th are probably more well-known than Evil Dead, but they're all have such a huge following, it would just be, like, a fan appeasement thing. So I think at the end of the movie, probably really wouldn't get what you wanted because they'd have to keep everybody happy through it.
Well, too, since Robert Englund's out of the game, it's like that time has passed,
Yeah.
Well, he can still play the part.
I think he's done, though, right? Isn't that what his deal was after Freddy versus Jason? He said
they could just CGI him.
Yeah, because it's working so well for the new Terminator film.
Yeah, or just do that,
or just dump a bucket of money in his door and say, "Look at the business the Avengers is doing."
Yeah, you never know. He could be running short on cash.
But that, I think that kind of wraps up that news. It's just it's one of those Friday 13th series. Regardless of what they do, half the fans are going to hate it, half of them will like it. We'll see what they actually come out with. Beyond that, this week I didn't really get a chance to watch any movies because I was just really busy with work. So I don't really have anything to talk about here aside from just the movie Poltergeist. But this week we did have a video that got hung up a little bit in YouTube's Content ID. So Sean, you can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, I did a video review for Brian De Palma's 1974 Phantom of the Paradise. And that's a Fox film, which we've ran into issues before. So when I actually posted it on Saturday because it got a little behind. But when I posted it, it had a content flag or whatever, which has happened to some of William's videos on the X-Files videos. So I guess, William, you think posting on Facebook, right, embedding there, then putting on the site?
Yeah, because the problem with YouTube, a little bit behind the curtain type stuff, if you're not aware of this. So when you upload videos to YouTube, content owners, so the big movie studios, music studios, etc., they upload all their material to a database, and then YouTube runs all new uploads against that database. If it gets flagged, then it automatically enacts on your video like that content holder's preference. So Fox content, they always block it worldwide. So if you get flagged with Fox content in your video, nobody can watch it and it's blocked worldwide. Some of the other studios don't care. Some of them will just put ads on it so they get the ad revenue and you don't. And other ones will do, it just depends on what it is. But in case of Fox, they just say, screw you, we don't want anybody watching these videos. Yank, can't watch it.
So it's just big cock block pretty much.
Yeah, and then the other video services like Vimeo, and now that Twitter and Facebook have video upload capability, those services don't have the automatic content matching system. They rely on content holders sending them takedown notices for specific videos. And in that case, they actually have to have seen the video first. In most cases, if it's a review or something, it's like, okay, well, this is fair use, and they don't send the takedown notice. But with YouTube, automatically gets flagged. You have to go through a dispute process, and if you lose, you get strikes against your account, and you get so many, and they shut it down. So it's not very friendly to the video uploader.
Yeah, we got to keep an eye on that and be prepared for that next time with Fox Films because William's working on an Aliens related video, and down the road we talked about doing a big retrospective on the entire series for sometime around when the new film was, is getting closer to release or whatever. I mean, we may do it whenever, but we definitely wanted to get it done before that. So that's just something we're going to have to work around from now on and host elsewhere. So if you're like, if you basically only listen to the podcast and go to our YouTube channel, be sure to check up on the site, because for all the Fox movies, it sounds like they won't be on YouTube, or heavily edited versions. So sorry, you've got to go to our website.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of the X-Files videos I've done have only been 30 seconds, because that's short enough that you don't get caught up in the content. And like the X-Files home video, I had to go in and re-edit it like 8 times to get all the clips out there getting caught by the content ID matching system. So it's just kind of a pain.
Yeah, and not to push it too hard, but that's another reason to give us a like on Facebook or follow us on Twitter, just because if like I said, if you're only on YouTube, you may just miss out on some of the stuff we're posting and may never know that it even existed, in case it was something you're interested in. But I don't know, I just, in my mind, I didn't think that Phantom of the Paradise, which was a box office flop from 1974, was going to get flagged on YouTube of all movies. I love the film, and I did a review so more people, kind of draw some more attention to it, because there was a 40th anniversary re-release. It's great music, great performances. It's funny, and it's kind of like a rock opera. Some people say it's a lot of people's answers to Rocky Horror Picture Show, because it's more in line with their preferences for those people that the Rocky Horror doesn't appeal to, and that's how this is for me. There's a lot more talking than you would expect to call it really a musical. It just has a lot of songs in it, and the Paul Williams, who is a singer-songwriter, he wrote for the Carpenters, and he did the Muppet song Rainbow Connection, and worked with Daft Punk on Random Access Memories and stuff. He wrote all the music for the film, and he's in it, and it just has awesome music throughout, different genres. Brian De Palma, he's kind of really experimenting with his styles and stuff. This was before he directed Carrie, and this is a better looking film than Carrie. Even though it's older, I don't know if I just haven't seen a good transfer of Carrie, but Carrie seems kind of like a dirtier, 70s horror film, where this just, like, the Blu-ray released, it just looks awesome and fantastic, and it's just like a visually a great film. Musically, it's not slow at all. Like, it just keeps moving, really rewatchable too. So if it sounds interesting, check out the review and see if it's something you might want to check out. But I highly recommend it, especially for De Palma fans that haven't seen it yet. And that's pretty much all I watched aside from Poltergeist, I think, because I was working on that. Yeah, that's about it. What about you, Derek?
Since we were kind of like the Mad Max thing the past couple of weeks, I watched Beyond Thunderdome, which I hadn't watched it in so long. It's not that it was a bad movie. It's so different from, the first two. It's just kind of like more of a family-friendly Mad Max almost out of the rest of them. But last week or so we had a fan sent us a message. We've been talking about kind of like the lack of original horror movies and stuff, and one of our listeners sent us an email giving us a couple of movie suggestions, which I haven't had a chance to watch. I've been so busy with work myself the past 2 weeks. Now it's finally calmed down, so when we get a chance, we'll watch them.
Did he send this to Corey or to our news email? Or
I believe he sent it to Corey.
Okay. Cool.
But his name's Michael Brown, and he gave us a couple of suggestions. And if y'all have seen him, you can tell me. Looks like you suggested a movie called Jugface and Resolution. And he said both of them were on Netflix at the time.
Yeah, Resolution I've heard is really good.
Yeah, he sent me those. Yeah, I really want to check them out. I've been so busy the past couple of weeks, but I do plan on I'll check them out, and I'm sure we'll talk about them next week. But anything people can send us about suggestions and stuff to watch is great, because I love just watching different stuff, and anything that's just different or just kind of breaking up what I usually watch is always kind of a nice thing.
And two, like if you listen to the podcast and have any strong opinions, you can always let us know. You can let us know on our Twitter account, because we always post the podcast links there, and on Facebook in the comments or on the site. Just because in the world of the internet, people typically only give you feedback when they really hate what you did. and it's usually pretty negative and not constructive. It's just like, oh, you're ugly and gay. It's like, well, that doesn't really.
That doesn't pertain to my review of Mad Max Fury Road, but okay.
It's like, I don't know that sexual orientation plays into any of this. But definitely, like, if you have any feedback, always just let us know. Because it's always good to know what people like or don't like. Because, like, on this podcast, we've only been doing it for a little while, and hopefully we've gotten better at it. Just kind of got to get used to how all this works. And like I said, like, the videos, we do get some feedback on the videos. Just because
it's always nice to get that, too, because, you know, sometimes it sways, you know, maybe we should try doing something like this because it gets responded to well or whatever, because we're doing it for fun. At the same time, we want to do it so people can enjoy it and show people new stuff. So,
yeah, and too, like, on the YouTube side, like, every now and then, like, we get, you know, thumbs up or down on videos, and that's good just because, you know, it shows people like it or dislike it. But if you actually give us a thumbs down, you know, if you could throw a comment as to why you did it, that kind of helps us, you know, fix things in the future. Or because I know some people just watch 3 seconds of video. It's like, oh, I don't like the sound of this guy's voice. Thumbs down.
Yeah, we might be opening Pandora's box there too for YouTube people to.
Hey, bring it on.
Or post a comment on the Facebook comments, because people usually have a little bit more decorum and thought into those types of posts.
Yeah, there's not as many trollers, it seems like, on Facebook.
Because it's linked to their personal page.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we're still, you know, it's just, this thing's always evolving. We've been going since, was it August 30th we launched last year, William?
It was August 1st. It was kind
August
of like the launch.
1st.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we're getting around to getting close to a year. So, yeah, we're still figuring this thing out, and we always will. You know, it'll probably change direction. I feel like our content's changed a lot too, just from when the site started. But that also has to do with, you know, Corey was doing more videos back then, so it was more his taste. And I've kind of started doing some videos because he's getting busier and everything. So all that changes. Not that you're going to change our opinion or our taste, but maybe the type of videos, you know, top fives, or if you'd like seeing reviews of lesser known films, you know, just let us know, because we're always just trying to brainstorm ideas. So if we get some thrown at us, that makes it even easier. One other thing I watched real quick was, did you guys watch the trailer for Eli Roth's Knock Knock?
Yeah, I was kind of glad you brought that up. I saw that earlier today.
Did you watch that, William?
I've seen parts of it. I think I've seen like an early teaser trailer. I haven't seen the full trailer that came out recently.
Essentially, Keanu Reeves has like great wife, kids, and I think it's his birthday or something. I don't know. He's celebrating. You can tell he has a good home life, if you can say that about an adult. And his essentially his family leaves and he's at home alone. Well, these two, I don't know, I guess they're 18. They look younger, but they look of age. They come to his house because it's raining and they need to use a phone. They ended up taking a shower and let's just say they seduce him and he ends up going with it. And it seems like he's resisting. So you're like, okay, this guy at least made an effort. And eventually, I guess they come back, Derek. Do they leave and come back?
I think they, they do.
Yeah, I think they leave and come back and tie him up and kind of, I guess, torture him. But what I read, it was a lot of psychological torture. So it doesn't look like it's a torture porn film. But like they tie him up to the bed and they're filming him while one of the girls puts on his daughter's schoolgirl uniform. So it's freaking him out and gets on top of him. And it's Keanu Reeves, so it's him being Keanu. So I think that could be pretty entertaining. It looks pretty good. I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Eli Roth. Like, I think he likes a lot of good stuff.
Yes.
And references good things in the work he does. I've just never really connected with any of his movies.
Yeah. Cabin Fever was pretty good. Hostel, I just was not on board with it. Maybe I need to watch it again, but I saw it in theaters when it first came out. Let's see, what else?
The only thing I really ever liked that he was directly involved with was Inglourious Bastards. And, he just acted in it.
Well, he's one of Tarantino's hype boys.
He's in Death, and vice versa, too. Death Proof, he's also in that, which I love. And also, this is supposed to be a remake of Death Game from 1977, which I haven't seen. But, hey, maybe we can check that out before this comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, and two, If you want to see Eli Roth produced show where he directs a few episodes, you can watch Hemlock Grove on Netflix. It's a vampire werewolf show that's not very good.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Is there
Another-
any reference to?
another- Go ahead.
Is there any reference to pancakes in that?
I don't think so. And that's the Karate Kid from Cabin Fever.
Yeah.
See, that's just a movie like where I saw a bunch of reference to Evil Dead, but the movie itself wasn't anywhere near as compelling.
No.
Well, it's funny though because I feel like a lot of people I work with they kind of like live out in the middle of nowhere and don't know anything about anything, and a lot of those guys just know that movie because of the pancake thing, which I thought was just kind of funny. It's like I work with a bunch of just really country people and they all knew that movie just because of like the Karate Pancake Kid. So I guess that's one thing the movie's got. It's just got one of the weirder scenes in it that just kind of, even if you're not into those movies, you just kind of know about it because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, did you guys see the sequel to that? I know he didn't direct it.
No.
Mark Borchardt from American Movie, he has a cameo in it. The sequel wasn't bad. It was all right. It's good cameos. It's good scenes.
Did he get any more of the people from Boy Meets World to play in it?
I don't think so. Actually, but he's in it for a short bit, I believe. Just like a very small part.
The second one was directed by Ty West.
Yes.
So I haven't seen that movie. I've seen most of his other movies, which I've at least enjoyed, like House of the Devil and the Innkeepers and what was the one he had? The Sacrament or something that was.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. Innkeepers, I was like, on. That didn't do it for me. But House of the Devil, I loved, and that's why I watched Cabin Fever 2. But and real quick, another piece of TV horror news: Empire of the Dead, George Romero. Graphic novel he did, which was a 15-issue graphic novel published by Marvel. Guess they're turning that into a TV series. So, and it also includes vampires.
Any idea what?
Mainly taking place in New York City, which is cool because it's not like a countryside or whatever.
Any idea what network might pick it up?
Who knows? It's Marvel. They could go straight to Netflix.
Yeah, I'd much prefer them go to like something like Netflix.
That'd be perfect for a horror thing that they could one up Walking Dead. Not that they need to on the violence. Not that that's what matters the most, but
they just do
they have
a
more
bunch of
freedom.
Well, since
CGI blood.
Since Marvel's owned by Disney and they have ABC Family, Disney, all that, maybe it'll end up on the ABC Family channel.
Oh God.
For what? For their like 20, 30 nights of Halloween or something for October.
Oh. Yeah, and then there's also the I don't have the story pulled up in front of me, but there's Wes Craven is involved in a couple of upcoming TV series. So there's a bunch of horror coming to TV.
Yeah.
Because you have like Ash vs. the Evil Dead. Of course, you have The Walking Dead and its spinoff. Oh, those aren't. I wouldn't say they're necessarily horror. They're just zombie shows. Then you have the Wes Craven projects. You have Scream, which is on MTV, unfortunately, and the trailer for it didn't look very good, but they could surprise us.
Scream Queens also. Did you watch the full trailer for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Ryan Murphy.
Definitely you could tell it's from the creators of Glee. Or once you hear that, you're like, not surprising.
Well, it's Glee and American Horror Story.
Yeah.
So I think that they just told everybody, it's like, okay, so watch the craziest scenes from American Horror Story, and that's the level you're on the entire show, but crank it up to 11. But I mean, they do have some decent cast members with Jamie Lee Curtis and Emma Roberts, so we'll see what they turn out. Fox, I don't know.
There's humor to it, and it seems like that Glee sense of humor, which doesn't really do it for me, and especially I just don't feel like it mixes well with with the horror. I think it's supposed to be like dark humor, kind of a dark humor, but I don't know if the tone is going to be for me.
Yeah. And then on TV, we also, as we've mentioned before, we have the X-Files and Twin Peaks coming back. Mm-hmm. So it's yet to be seen how dark the X-Files goes, if they have any one-offs that are on the same tone as Home or some of their other scarier episodes. And
isn't that going to be... I just heard that's going to be like one... How many episodes is X-Files?
It's supposed to be 6 episodes starting in January.
I think David Duchovny said it's going to be like a 6-episode long movie. So apparently it may be one storyline.
Yeah. They said that, but they have multiple writers. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out.
I really hope they can just get into other territory than the alien stuff. Like, I know they might have to kind of do a quick summarization of everything that happened from like the last movie, but I like for them just to kind of get that out of the way and just get into like the more interesting.
The last movie they don't have to cover because it's a guy tries to put somebody's head on a girl's body and
the last
somebody has cancer.
Well, the last one, what was the one that came out in 2000, I guess?
Well, they have to address the storyline of the show because I think according to the storyline of the show, like Alien, like the invasion is supposed to happen like 2012, so they have to talk about why that did or didn't happen. Hopefully they like cleared up in like a line of dialogue in the first episode and then just go into new stories.
Yeah, I really would like them to do that because I just feel like they've kind of ran the Alien stuff quite a while. And I think the one-off, just kind of like Monster. I enjoy like the Monster of the Week stuff a little bit more than their overarching Alien line.
Too, in the world of the internet and surveillance and all the stuff and conspiracy stuff that's actually out there, like that actually makes the show's plot line of like don't believe anyone and all that stuff like that makes more sense in the context of today than it did in the 90s when it was super successful pre 9/11, pre NSA wiretaps, like all that. So it'd be interesting to see how they approach all the real world events.
Yeah, a lot of new TV coming that's remakes or TV versions of stuff, and a lot of horror. But we'll see how it all pans out. Probably a third of those will be any good, if that.
yeah. The horror genre it's gotten its due to some extent on cable, like on HBO, Showtime, like Masters of Horror and different things, and Tales from the Crypt and. Cable shows, like I said, like The Walking Dead on AMC, even though a lot of, like, none of us are huge fans, but, it does cater to the horror audience as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, it just opened a door, too, for a lot of these other shows to even exist, because of its popularity, it shows that you can do that and get a large audience and big following off of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's too, American Horror Story, Hannibal, there's a lot of...
Yeah, Hannibal starts back very soon. It starts back in, I think, June 3rd. And if you haven't watched that show and you have Amazon Prime, you can watch on Amazon, watch instant video. So I would definitely recommend watching it. It's only, like, the episodes or the seasons are short. It's only, like, 10-episode seasons. The show is... I couldn't believe that it airs on NBC when I finally watched it, just how brutal it is on some of the episodes and stuff they show. It's definitely more graphic than the movies were. Or at least as I remember them.
Yeah. They were classy pictures, William.
Well, another thing, too, though, is, like, you think about it, like, when the Hannibal movies came out, early 2000s? The actual Hannibal movie, not...
Well, Silence of the Lambs, like, 1990, 91. Hannibal was 2001, I think.
Yeah, so that first Hannibal movie came out in 2001. So you just think about how much different things are on TV, 13, 14 years. Because you look at your
Criminal Minds on CBS. I only see that because I have a job where that is on TV a lot, and it's pretty like whoa sometimes.
Yeah, like I was saying, like with all the CSI shows and like all the morgue stuff they show, it's like it's not really that bad anymore. You think those are shows that everybody watch, and they have, a lot of times there's people that are just all cut up and deformed, and they still show it. So
it seems like they can show really graphic things as long as the body's dead on TV.
Well, and to go
That's
back,
what I see a lot.
And to tap back to the X-Files a second ago, one thing I think the X-Files kind of started as like a genre of like crime show was like typically on shows you didn't see people doing autopsies very often. Like they just they mention it in passing or something, like NYPD Blue or like the cop shows of the era. But like after the X-Files, like on the X-Files, like almost every other episode, Scully's like doing autopsies and doing like gross stuff. And now every single show does like in-depth CG autopsies that show like a pipe going up someone's urethra and exploding their balls. Like
people love looking at dead bodies on TV.
Hey, at least the X-Files did a one on an elephant first, because I believe there was one where they had like the zoo animals getting abducted by aliens, and she had to do an autopsy on an elephant. Or remember that one, William?
I think I remember one where the alien, or there was like animals possessed people or something. I don't remember.
There's South Park or.
All right, so I think we covered enough what we're watching in news to get into the discussion of Poltergeist. And if you weren't aware of the story for Poltergeist, a family whose suburban home is haunted by evil forces must come together to rescue their youngest daughter after the apparitions take her captive. And this is I guess you would call it a remake of the original Poltergeist film that was released in 1982. And that movie was directed by Tobe Hooper and produced by Steven Spielberg. And there is a little bit of discussion or dispute as to who actually directed most of that movie, because some people claim that Spielberg was much more responsible in the end than Tobe Hooper was. Of course, Tobe Hooper directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Funhouse, a number of other popular movies, and some less popular stuff. But just for thoughts on this movie, let's start off with Sean.
Yeah, did not like it. It was like almost incredibly. It was a huge misfire. I think it felt, this movie. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, remakes are cash grabs." This felt like that. Who was the director? Gil directed Monster House. Let me pull this up. Sorry, Gil Keenan.
Anderson.
It felt like he got a job to direct a movie and was like, "All right, I'll do it for the money," and then just, they slap something together. This feels very much like a cash grab. It does not seem like Sam Raimi was as involved with this as Spielberg was with the original. There's just a lot of it. It seems like they took the blueprint of the original and then just kind of, threw some people in it. It doesn't seem like it really had much time to kind of ferment the script writing process, characters development. I think there's like awful dialogue. There's just some hilariously bad scenes, some bad acting too. The son in the film, I hate to diss him because he's a kid, but he's pretty bad. It's just, even Sam Rockwell, there's some scenes he's kind of great and you think he's like kind of taking ownership of the character. But I think just some of the dialogue that he was given kills it too as well. And it really wasn't that scary either. It was just, and I don't feel like it was structured well. Like I said, I feel like they took the blueprint of the original and they knew, okay, well, this happens and this happens and this happens. And then maybe it's because I've seen the original somewhat recently and watched a lot as a kid. I felt like, even though it's not exactly the same at all, but I felt like, okay, I'm waiting for this kind of scene to happen and I'm waiting for this one to happen. And none of them were enough to make me excited about seeing them again. And it was just kind of felt like I was just waiting for things to be over with.
Well, and two, I forgot to mention this a second ago. We're not going to cover any spoilers initially. We'll cover that at the end when we start going into spoilers. But without giving a huge spoiler, I will say that the scariest scene in the movie was courtesy of a squirrel.
Yeah, I didn't see it in 3D, but I knew you guys did, and I thought that would be a little scary in 3D.
Yeah, I just think like I think the biggest thing that hurt this movie is the fact that and I hate to you're gonna have to compare it to the original because it's a remake. Is the fact that the original one was so much on practical effects, and then this one was relied so heavily on CGI. And I think in the long run that hurts films because it's like when I think of Poltergeist, when I watch it when I was younger, and AMC always shows like 1,000 times during Halloween, and you go watch it, and that movie is really big on just practical effects, and it seems like too that in this one everything happened so much faster. But when it happened, it just wasn't as creepy or scary. Like it just seemed so forced to me through most of the movie, and that they relied too heavily. I would almost rather them just remade the movie in the 80s and not done it in the current era and had all the technology they had in it. Because I think that a lot of times they just threw a lot of that stuff in there just because it exists. Not maybe because it was the best way to do. Because there was a couple of scenes where they just relied too heavily on current day technology and just CGI stuff. And I just think that that hurt it because the last half of the movie was just almost just CGI. And it just made it I don't know, it was harder to get into.
And I think that, I haven't looked this up at all, but I'm pretty sure they got a sizable chunk of money from the company Parrot that makes the AR drone series. Because there's a very big scene that very prominently uses an AR drone.
Yeah, it almost saves the family.
and And like Sean, if somebody actually has a drone, I don't think it would be as easy to navigate a drone through a house, through doorways, and as precisely as this as it is used in the movie.
While using it on an iPad.
Yeah, through the gateways of hell too. Not just like a normal door. You're talking like you're just going through different dimensions, no problem. And you can control it fairly easily.
And another thing, kind of about the structure of the film, the other one, as Derek said, this one feels a little rushed, and that's fine if they want to kind of amp it up. But the other one, it didn't need, a lot of, it used practical effects. It didn't need CGI, and it built such a good atmosphere and kind of, there was just an eerie tone to it all. And it was so much more connected to the storyline, because Craig T. Nelson plays like a developer or whatever. And so there's all this stuff going on. In this film, they're apparently financially strapped, which is weird. Spoilers, they buy a house or, obviously that they go move into this new house. Well, it's just a lot of weird decisions. They're financially strapped, yet they're like, oh, it's just temporary. Yet they buy a house instead of like renting one. You know what I mean? There's just a lot of like, and that's what I feel like. None of it was very well developed. And there's just so many little things in there that kind of, and I'm usually not nitpicky, and I can let a lot of things slide and enjoy a film for what it is. But, it's just like, this is a stupid thing to point out, but the son gets scared of the dark on the first night, and the mom walks out, and he screams for her, and she's like, what's wrong? He's like, nightlight. And she walks in the room and plugs in a nightlight immediately, like she had it in her hand the whole time. Like, I think that's what happened. I don't know. There was just a bunch of weird stuff like that where the director was just like, oh, well, we'll just do this to get this over with, and, this will be fine doing this. And it all felt like everybody was on set just waiting to get things done and not caring about, kind of crafting some type of world. It was just, they just had to get through the process. Let's just get through this scene. Let's get through this scene. That's how the script felt. That's how, the filmmaking felt. That's how the acting felt. It just felt very, it didn't feel like a very passionate film from anybody involved, really.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there was a huge lack of Craig T. Nelson in this one too, because I was just hoping he was going to be in it for just a small cameo.
If he would have been, if he would have came back to exercise the house or something,
or they've been the ones selling them the house, that would have been pretty awesome.
Yeah, that would have been great.
And theoretically, this could exist in the same universe as the original.
Yeah, because they were talking about the houses were like sold in the 90s and stuff. So it, I know that happened. The movie came out in the 80s, but still could have floated around for a while. I think it got destroyed.
I think they went out of their way to make a point that this wasn't an Indian burial ground.
Yeah, which I think was kind of stupid. I mean, they could just go with it. But I just think a lot of it, like Sean said, there's a lot of stuff in it that just didn't really, I don't know, it just didn't really gel. And like the fact that like, we're not in the spoiler portion, but there's a lot of stuff the parents did that just was like, this is really how you're going to handle this. Like, you're not going to worry too much about it. And the fact they put like the middle child that was still like under the age of 10 in the attic room instead of the oldest daughter didn't make much sense to me either. And
I also thought that skylight would be horrible when you try to wake up in the morning because sun was going to blast him right in the face.
And you look like a ginger, so you probably get sunburnt too. So it just
Mom,
put your sunscreen on, honey. It's time to go to bed.
but just this movie in general, like one thing that I would say that is definitely missing. So when you watch the original Poltergeist, regardless of how involved Steven Spielberg was, that was during his heyday when he was at his peak for making movies about families and making his movies kind of like amusement park rides that were very thrilling and drew the audiences in. And
you cared about the characters and the family, and it wasn't just, it wasn't about the jump scares. And that's his bread and butter with Jaws, Jurassic Park, And
in the original Poltergeist, I just remember when I saw it as a kid, it's kind of like there's like an escalation of events. And then when the shit finally hits the fan, like in the original, I just remember like when the daughter falls in the swimming pool and it's got all the like skeletons and stuff in it. Mm-hmm. Like that was an incredibly frightening moment when I watched the movie. Like I said, in this one, there really weren't any truly scary moments. There was a lot of CG stuff, and when things finally hit the fan, it's not really scary.
Yeah, that's the problem I had is like, it's not like this was a movie where they came out of the gate pretty fast. There wasn't like a massive buildup to the shit hitting the fan on it. But when things finally started happening, it just was a lack of. There's just a lot of stuff that it just never seemed like really that like if that was actually happening to you. I don't think it would have been that terrifying. Like it just lacked a lot of stuff, and you have to go make comparisons to the original, and you just look at what the original was able to do, and it's just still so much more entertaining. Even though maybe I'm a little more biased toward the original because it's one of those movies you grew up watching. But it just seemed like
I don't think this is a situation of bias. I think
that's what I'm saying. I think the original was just better, and this new one, just to me, I think this is the biggest thing that hurt it is just the use of CGI, and it's like they overused it in situations where they didn't really need to, and it just kind of almost killed the film out in the last 20 or 30 minutes because there's just so much more fun you could have had by just terrorizing everybody in the house with practical effects.
Yeah, they're simple. Like the kitchen scene in the original is like one that always stood out to me. Like I love that scene, and that's what does that take to do? Not that I think they should have recreated that, but it's just the kind of the ideal behind that of just this little thing that kind of it progresses the story and the situation, but at the same time it's kind of terrorizing it's kind of scaring the family, but it's also showing how they deal with the situation.
And the fact that Sam Raimi, like you said, maybe didn't have a huge role in it, but his name was attached to the film somewhat. I was really, hoping that there would have been like some almost Three Stooges gags, or like a skeleton hand pull somebody down and dots them in that, or just something goofy, or expecting at least one skeleton hand was going to pop out of something and grab somebody, or
but I think that's his personal thing because even the Evil Dead remake, he kind of. I think he lets the directors go, but I was hoping he'd have maybe he would have had his his hand in a little bit more. And another thing about the original, I feel like it gave such a good it made you feel like this is an American family from the early 80s, and it felt like they were part of the neighborhood. It just it felt alive. The whole environment, everything about that film. And this one, even my wife said, she's like, everything looks like it's on a set. It just feels very much like a movie, not that you're watching a movie, not that you're like in this place with these people.
And one thing too that the original has going for it now, like after the fact, was you heard about like the curse of Poltergeist, about the things that happen to different people in the movie. So you have this built-in mystique to it that just, the production of it was troubled, and then there was, things happened to some of the actors in the movie. So it just adds a layer of mystique to it that when you watch it makes it even creepier and gives it more, towards this one doesn't even play on that whatsoever. I'm not really sure how you could have evoked that in the movie without breaking the fourth wall, but I'm sure there's something they could have done. Just at least a hint at some. It felt like a very maybe, by the numbers movie.
Yeah, but maybe they didn't want to touch that just out of respect at the same time,
Yeah, it's just like we said.
It does feel very by the numbers.
So but this, like, just kind of like the number side of things. Like when we saw this in the theater on a Saturday night, May 23rd, this was the most people I'd seen in a theater for a horror movie in a while, which is kind of sad when you think about this is what they're seeing. And the box office numbers for this weekend, I'd have to look, but I think it made in the high 20s, like 27 or so million. So it's going to make more in this weekend than something like It Follows will make in its entire run.
Yeah.
And it's just...
And it doesn't seem like much thought was put into this.
And it's just the audience didn't have a lot of response to it, because a lot of times for horror movies, you get like oohs and ahs, or
you get
reacting.
Oh shit,
or people laughing because they're scared or nervous.
And this one was kind of pretty mild, because in this movie there was just, like I said, when you go to the pure CGI aspect, it just, there wasn't anything that you knew was going to happen. It just kind of out of for a key few moments of the movie, there was just almost no audience participation whatsoever. There wasn't really anybody screaming, or it just kind of was just a movie.
Yeah, and I wanted to see it with because that's why I love going to the movies, see comedies or horror films. I love seeing with the audience. So I saw it. We're recording this on Sunday, but I saw it Sunday really early, like 11:30 in the morning, and when I was buying my ticket, the guy there, he's been there before, he was like, "Ooh, Poltergeist." He said, "Oh boy," he said, "I'm gonna take my kids to see that later." Like everybody loves the original Poltergeist that's seen it or that's grown up with it, you know. So it's just a free ticket to print money, you know, just like most remakes are, and that's how they get remade. But I just wish they would have found somebody who was really passionate about it and, you know, and just would have knocked it out of the park. Because even if they would have shifted genres, if they would have made it into somewhat of a, and I'm not saying a full-on horror comedy, like, but, you know, if there would have been some more humor to it, because I feel like the original had more humor in it than this one did, at least genuine humor, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying too, though, like, not what was what was the dad's name, the actor?
Sam Rockwell.
I've liked him in other movies, but
Yeah.
just something about like maybe the way the character was written, he just wasn't like that likable. But something, you know, when you look at Craig T. Nelson's version, like that family was just way more likable, it seemed. And this movie, it just seemed like there was like, you know, the parent. You didn't really care for any of the
It's
anybody
because
in
they
the movie.
seemed like a family before, and this one does not, you know.
Yeah.
It's just,
Like in this one, it's just, you know, a lot of movies talk about, do you really care if anything happens to the characters? Not, and really, if all of them had just died, you'd be like, man.
So the original Poltergeist was roughly 21 minutes longer than this one, which definitely feels like, because I think in the original they built the family up a little bit more, so when things finally do go down, you feel more sympathetic towards them.
Well, they made it. They like Sean was saying earlier, though, it just felt like a real family in a real neighborhood. Where this one just like. They moved in. I think they lived in the house, 2 days, and then everything just went to shit. Like the other one seemed like it had, you know, I think they lived in the house a little bit longer before everything just
and
fell
everything
apart.
was more connected. Craig T. Nelson was a developer. You know what I mean? Like there's just,
And the portions of the movie where they brought in someone to investigate what's going on or cleanse the house, I think it was much more effectively done in the original and much more iconic. This house is clean.
you can't top that. At least, I mean, I was going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like no way they can top the original.
Oh, they didn't.
Zelda, whatever her name is.
Do y'all want to go ahead and just move into the spoilers now too, so it'll be a little bit easier
We can
to
final thoughts real quick
final
for people who
thoughts.
don't want to
Alright.
go into that.
Yeah, so we can just wrap it up real quick, kind of give just an overall opinion whether or not someone should see it. We can start with Derek.
You know, if you're just wanting to see, I really couldn't recommend. Honestly, if you ask me, I think if you want to watch it when it comes out on Netflix or if it comes out on some type of watch instant, I would stick with that. As far as going to the theater, you know, like for instance, we watched it in 3D, so it was $13 a person. Would I recommend somebody will spend $13 per person to watch this? No. It wasn't a great movie, and it wasn't really, honestly, it really wasn't even that fun to watch. You know, so I was really disappointed with it because with some, you know, like when you say his name is Sam Rockwell, I like him, and I was kind of hoping that the movie be pretty good, but it just, to me, it just really just, like Sean said, it was a complete misfire of what it could have been. You know, it just didn't seem anything like the original whatsoever on the way anything happened. And it just seemed really forced and rushed and just like ultimately just a money grab. So I really couldn't recommend the movie and feel comfortable telling somebody to go spend money on it. So, I mean, like, if it was one of those things where if you really wanted to watch it just because you like the original, I would wait till it was on some type of streaming service instead of actually going to the theater and, you know, paying $10 or whatever to watch it.
Yeah, so I think that, like you said, if you're going to the movie theater to see it, I don't think that there's really much in it that's worth seeing in 3D. I mean, there's a few scenes here and there where they actually use the effect.
Hey, William, to be fair, or in 2D.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, if you decide you have to see this movie in theaters, I don't think that the 3D really brings anything to it. Like last week, Mad Max actually gained something by being in 3D. This one didn't. I just don't see 3D being used properly in most of the horror movies because they're also cheaper movies, so they're not being shot fully in 3D with all the top of the line cameras and choreography and everything to take advantage of it. So it just doesn't work as well. I don't like. There is some enjoyment factor to this movie. I mean, it's not unwatchable. It's not, one of the worst remakes I've ever seen. I mean, I think it's a little bit more enjoyable than like the Friday the 13th and stuff like. Or not Friday the 13th. Nightmare on Elm Street. That remake was just rough, but it's not really good. It's not terrible. Like I think Derek could say, like if you catch it on, like if you have HBO and it comes on, it's not the worst way you could spend an hour and 30 minutes, but I would just recommend dusting off a copy of the original and watching that instead.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said not unwatchable. That's the box quote for this movie. I think when it comes to DVD, it's not unwatchable. William Capps, House by the Video Store. That's exactly how I would describe this film because, you know, it was kind of laughing at it a little bit, but not even laughing at it in a great way. Just kind of like we were making fun of it through most of the time in the theaters because it wasn't crowded. And it had me talking a lot through it. And that's why, because I was just like, I need something to entertain myself because this movie isn't doing it. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, I have a pretty high tolerance for stuff and I can find the enjoyment in a lot of things. A buddy of mine, Evan, he always says, oh, you like everything but Euro Trip. And there's one other movie too that I always talk about hating. But yeah, normally I can give movies a pass and find something enjoyable. This just felt, you know, it just missed. It was a huge misfire, and yeah, watch the original and yeah, check it out if you're curious. But you know, kind of vote with your dollar. I don't recommend going to see this in theaters because hopefully they won't make a sequel to it because typically these remakes, the sequels get even worse. And if it's worse than this, then it's going to waste a lot of people's time and efforts even producing the film. Like, it makes some people some money, but it's just, yeah.
It'd be harder to make. I mean, like, it's not that it's like the worst movie. It's definitely not the worst horror movie I've ever seen or one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But it's just like, honestly, for what that you've been given already to produce what you made, it's just like, really? Like, you already have like a template of what to do. Yeah. Just do that in 3D or make the, you know, or just update it and then just put it out. Don't change everything. And it just like, I don't know. They just, like I said, I think you're right. It's just a huge misfire. They just completely missed whatever it was that they could have done with it.
And I think, William, I asked you guys what you thought of it real quick when I was going this morning to see it, just because I wanted to know a brief opinion. And William, I think you said unnecessary. Did you say unnecessary remake?
I said that it's somewhat enjoyable but unnecessary.
Yeah, and that's exactly it's unnecessary. Also, it's just you know, there's no points where this excels above the original, or even takes ownership, or just, you know, it doesn't play with any ideas. It's just uninspired and lazy filmmaking, lazy writing, and I don't recommend watching it unless it's on streaming or something like that. And you're just curious and one of those things you want to check off your list. That's the only reason to watch this.
Another thing too is this lazy, like their imagination must have sucked too, because like just the last when they go into the hell dimension, it was just so stupid. It honestly reminded me
of... not too many spoilers on this.
Yeah, just kind of reminded me of
watching Spawn.
That or
1997 Spawn.
That or the second Mummy with Brendan Fraser, where I think, or maybe it's Scorpion King with Brendan Fraser in it, where they have like the dead people on the side of the wall. They're coming, like they're trying to grab everybody. That was I mean, it was just the same thing. It's like, come on, guys, we couldn't be a little more original. We were having to take stuff from a Brendan Fraser rock movie into here.
So I think we can just sum up the opinion as not that enthusiastic. Not. This is probably like out of all the podcasts we've done so far, the thing that everyone in general has liked the least, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, it's not dog trash, but it's pretty close.
Like
it's worse because it's boring. Like, you know, I enjoy like bad, good films, but
now that you say this, last night me and William were in that theater and a dude fell asleep and was snoring during
to be fair, I almost dozed off twice today. Yeah, that was 11:30 this morning after I'd slept all night.
But to be fair though, to this, me and my girlfriend had went and watched Avengers: Age of Ultron, and somebody else had fell asleep snoring.
Well, I think we can officially retire ever referencing that movie ever again on this podcast, because we've referenced it probably 50 times in the past 3.
Summer of Avengers.
And I've never referenced it in a good way either. So I'll leave that movie alone. But somebody did fall asleep in that and Poltergeist. It might have even been the same guy. I don't know.
So if you want to follow up with what we're doing, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes if you haven't already. And if you like what we're doing, give us a good review, 5 stars preferably. You can always find us on Twitter at HBTVS_official. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/HBTVS. Find us on YouTube at House by the Video Store. We're also on Vine at HBTVS_official and Instagram at the same username. Then you can find all the stuff we do on housebythevideostore.com. There's links to everything on there and all the stories and posts we put out. And as Sean mentioned earlier, there is some content we put out video-wise that doesn't end up on YouTube, so you can always find all that on the site. And that's just the best way to keep up with us. If you want to find the things that we're doing on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at Will_droid.
Mine is at Blevinssean, BLEVINSSEAN.
You can follow me on Instagram at MetaWorldDerek.
And that covers all the plugs. So now we can get into the spoiler discussion. So if you don't want to hear spoilers for this movie, you can go ahead and head out now. Thanks for listening. But now it's time for spoilers.
Okay, let me jump in real quick. When at the end of the film, when she's like, "How do I know you made it?" or whatever, to the ghost hunter, the TV ghost reality show guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You'll know," or something. Was that just supposed to be him on the GPS, and that was like the message? Like, I totally didn't get that.
Yeah, so it wasn't really
Yeah,
clear if he so his name was Kerrigan Burke, played by Jared Harris, who, if you watch Mad Men, was Lane Price. That's who I remember him as. But he goes into the hell dimension, and then he never comes back out, but then he shows up on the GPS, and then later, like in the pre-credit scenes, it shows him and that Dr. Brooke Powell, is her character name, doing a reality show together. So I'm assuming that he emerged from the dimension, and then they got back together.
I know, it's like, when they did that, I'm like, who the hell cares at this point?
Yeah, there was not much character development with them, and it just was like, really hope they don't try like some type of spin-off with it or something.
I think that
my God.
A much better version of that was done in Insidious with the paranormal investigators in that movie, Insidious 2 as well. And then The Conjuring was a good movie about real-life investigators. So, I mean, I think there's movies out there that have done stuff like that well. And it's just like the original Poltergeist had the very iconic character, just like her delivery of "this house is clean." Like, that's like a top horror moment that everyone knows about.
Yeah.
And her voice was just so weird and perfect for it.
And this one didn't even really have anything approaching that. And it's very forgettable. 6 months from now, nobody's going to be talking about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess the only good thing was, since everybody on the podcast is a fan of Sam Rockwell, at least he probably got a good payday.
Yeah. I feel like I remember reading some interview, and they asked him about the film, and from what I remember, he wasn't even quite sure the tone or like the direction of it. He seemed very unsure, and he couldn't really answer the question clearly, and it almost seemed to contradict what people thought of the film, like where it was going. So and also too, that made me feel like very, like, ugh. I don't think they knew what they wanted, Well,
and two, the trailer for this movie, and just kind of funny, I watched the trailer for the original Poltergeist and the trailer for the new one, and the trailer for this one, like, the clown was kind of like the scariest part of the trailer and what's on a lot of the posters and promotional materials, but they really wasted it in this movie. I think what they did with it in the original was much better.
Yeah, honestly, Scary Movie 2 did a more enjoyable with the clown.
Every time I see a clown now,
for that.
I see the
clown
clown.
wrap the clown up.
Yes, the clown pulling someone under the bed and then trying to sexually assault them, and then getting assaulted itself and getting a dick wrapped around his neck and pulling it back under. Like, so if you haven't seen Scary Movie 2, that scene's what we're referencing. Where which Wayans is it Marlon Wayne? No, Damon Wayne. Not Damon.
Yeah, Damon. No, I think it was Damon.
Shit, I don't remember.
One of the Wayans brothers is about to get sexually assaulted by the clown when he starts tickling the clown's butthole, so it tries to crawl underneath the bed. Then his dick comes around, wraps around the clown's neck, and it drags the clown back in. It's clawing the wood and stuff. That scene just seemed so wasted and not scary. Like, I remember when I was younger, that was like a creepy scene, and I watched that and I was like, yeah. Like, I don't even honestly feel like any child could get scared by watching that movie. There just wasn't, because I remember, like, when I was younger, like, nowadays I don't even think this even happens with movies, but when we were younger, you'd have the fuzzy gray channels,
Yeah,
and that always
watching the trailer, I was like, okay, what is giving static on the
It
television?
should be digitized glitches and stuff.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and it was
But-
Sean Wayans from Scary Movie 2.
Sean Wayans. Yeah, but just to me, like when I was a kid and I was younger and I watched that movie, that legitimately creeped me out. And I didn't, that was something that stuck with me for a long time. And on this, it was just like, since technology's changed a little bit, you can't really do that. But the way they did it to me just was stupid. And the dumbest scene in the entire movie was when the oldest daughter was listening to music by herself, like in the couch, and like she got all the interference and it started having like the demonic voices in her iPod or iPhone or whatever. And she's like walking around the house holding the phone out, listening to it. And it's like really.
Yeah, that looks stupid, the screen glitch. But I also, kind of a weird thing, our computer speakers at work, at our editing stations, if your cell phone is near and the Wi-Fi is on, it will make static come out through the speakers.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I could see like something, there could be something to that. But the screen glitching and all that,
But another thing, too, just to kind of go on your point earlier about the story inconsistency. So they buy the house despite the fact that Sam Rockwell's character is the only one that has a job and lost his job. So I guess you could theoretically justify it as they had a much more expensive house and they had paid it mostly off. So they had a lot of equity in it so they could buy a cheaper house. But he goes to the store and all of his credit cards at Warner maxed out. And then he comes back with what has to be about $6,000 worth of stuff.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing, Sam Rockwell? This family makes such poor decisions.
He comes back with like the AR drone 3.0. It's not even out yet. That's like, I think it's about $1,000. He bought his wife jewelry and thousands of dollars. Bought his daughter a new iPhone, which if it's out of contract,
maybe
is
out of contract,
$800. And then they didn't buy the little girl anything, did he? Or was it something cheap?
Pizza.
Pizza. Yeah,
She didn't like.
So they got the son and the oldest daughter like $1,000 of electronics, then gave the other daughter pizza that she didn't want.
No, he gave her the squirrel traps.
Yeah, and I will say like the part of the movie that got the biggest reaction from the audience was the squirrel, not the tree coming through the skylight.
Okay, that was really stupid. Also, I would have really just enjoyed if they had not casted Sam Rockwell, but they had casted Will Arnett as the father. And when they found out that the house was built on like the funeral or on like an old gravesite, he's like, "I've made a huge mistake."
And then there's something to do with bees. He's like, "Beads? Bees? No bees."
Another really stupid thing is when the tree's outside, like scratching the window, trying to be creepy. I was like, are you serious?
Yeah. Well, another thing too I like is like the parents come home and their kids just being slung around the tree.
Sam Rockwell's like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
After he drops from the sky.
Well, here's the thing. It doesn't make any sense. They stop and get out of their car in the street and run up to the house. Like if I was in a car, I'm just going to drive up to the house and get out instead of leaving my car like in the middle of the street.
And then and
the window wasn't broke after that either.
The oldest daughter she was getting pulled into the garage area into like a pit with dead bodies, which I guess was their take on the pool scene from the original, which didn't work as well. And then, the same thing happened. The little girl gets taken by the poltergeist, but the parents, they just seemed rather non-disturbed by it immediately afterwards. It was just like, well, let's go talk to some investigators. Where's she at?
And the son's outside just playing with his drone at that scene when the ghost hunter comes,
Yeah.
I'm like, really? He's just hanging outside, flying his drone around when he's not a little more freaked out?
And I really hate to reference Arrested Development again, but for anybody who's watched that, there's like a couple episodes they have Tom Jane in it, and he has a line where he's like, "I just want my kids back." In that movie, I think they made the reference, or not, they just said the line, "I just want my daughter back" a couple of times. And it's like they didn't really, like you said though, they really didn't care that much about it. They're just kind of like, she's gone. We're not going to call the cops.
And like I said, they had the blueprint for the original, and nothing that happens in this film is kind of supported by anything before it. It's just they hit these story beats, but there's no logical progression really. They just this happened in the original movie, so something similar is going to happen again, and you just feel like you're waiting for the next scene to happen, and nothing builds off anything previous.
Oh, and a brilliant scene from the original which I was really hoping they would reference in this one, was after they leave the house and it gets sucked into the ground and the neighborhood falls apart and all that, they go to a hotel at night and they're going to sleep. And I guess they wake up and the TV's on with all the static. So Craig T. Nelson takes the TV and puts it outside.
Yeah.
Like, I was really hoping they'd make like an homage to that or something, because that's one of those scenes that has always sticked out to me in those movies, because like, they're, yeah, fuck this, no TV, we're putting it outside. Whereas this one, they just kind of, I don't know. It just seemed like to me they just missed everything. They just
and again,
struck
on
out.
a basic level, just the static, like not making sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the little ghost hunter group was kind of annoying.
It was unnecessary.
Because they go in the house and immediately something happens that's more proof than they've ever experienced before, and they still don't treat everything seriously, or at least like the underlings do, like the little annoying white dude that is like drilling in the closet and his arm goes in the hole and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And like when that scene where the drill's being ran and poked through the wall, there's almost no tension to it, because you really... First off, it's rated PG-13, so they're not going to graphically kill the dude. And he was annoying enough that you didn't care.
And he was a terrible actor. His screaming was so hilarious.
I'm trying.
And
to,
he was just like squirming.
It's just the presentation of the other dimension or the hell dimension or whatever it was when the little girl was in it, and then the brother went through and the investigator. It's just, it was very CG and fake to the point that it was a non-entity almost. Like
Yeah.
like I think Insidious and the original Poltergeist did a much better version of like going into this other dimension, because you just make it normal but creepier and lit differently and dark and sparse.
Did they ever actually show it in the original Poltergeist? Because I cannot remember.
I don't think they showed like the big portal, which was awesome, but I don't feel like they showed anything.
Yeah, that scene was much shorter.
Yeah, I feel like too, though, sometimes like in that, just not showing it would have been creepier and just made other creepy things happen.
And it built tension because you didn't know what was going on. Like they literally like, well, let's fly the drone in, and then
they had the drone to kind of show them what
that dissipates almost all tension. Like you're supposed to have tension for the kid because he's in there, but really you don't care because you don't care about the characters. But it's that's another thing the other one did. It has an element of mystery to it. They just pull back the curtain too much in this film.
I'm like a big hypocrite on this. Sometimes I want to know everything, and sometimes I think it's better if you don't show that much. And this was a movie where they should have just not shown the hell dimension, because if you can't be more creative than just having CGI, it was almost just like, like you get like Microsoft Word and you find like the little generic pictures that put into like what you're writing.
Clip art.
Yeah, clip art. They went and found some generic clip art of what like demons look like, and like, oh, just going to throw the CGI coming on the walls.
Yeah,
and put the little girl out in there. And blah, blah, blah. It's like, really?
There could have been nobody involved with this film, and had somebody come up with the concept art. Maybe some concept art looked good, but the execution, there's nobody that could have been excited about like, oh, you're knocking out of the park. This is very, you know what I mean, out there and inspired, and this is going to creep people out. Nobody had to think that. They had to just think, okay, that'll do for that scene, and that's it. That's the baseline.
That'll do.
Exactly.
It's just it was very
lackluster.
It's just there was no, for me, the entire movie, it really evoked no emotion.
No,
because at least in like any good horror movie that's like this type of setup will have you at some point like on the edge of your seat or cringing as you watch what's happening on screen, or have you just invested in somebody's survival. But this movie just didn't evoke any of that. And it's also, since it's PG-13 and, a larger budget horror movie for, a major audience, you knew that everybody's going to live, because if you've seen the original. So it was just, there wasn't really any tension to it.
The one positive thing I say, Jane Addams, who played the doctor or whatever from the school.
Yeah.
I thought she was good. She was good. And then the little girl was pretty good as well.
Yeah, the little girl was actually
and
pretty
that was
good.
Like the two things that were like, okay, if they were to redo this all again, you can keep those two people. And that's
yeah,
it.
but I really don't like, because the original Poltergeist didn't really focus. Like I said, it's been a while since I watched it, but I don't remember them focusing on like one character necessarily over the other. Where this one definitely emphasized, it was like the Home Alone of horror movies, where it focused more on like the 10-year-old son than almost anybody else.
And I think that they just really, really missed an opportunity to use the clown stuff to be creepier than it was.
Yeah, it just, Yeah, because it just wasn't creepy. Like,
Because I think they should have built it up over the course of multiple nights and then just had it, go crazy as opposed to just kind of going off on I don't know.
Well, did you see who the screenwriter was for this?
It was
He worked on The Great and the Powerful of Oz, that movie Robots with Robin Williams,
David
CGI.
Lindsay Abair.
Yeah, Rise of the Guardians. So not a strong horror background. And it feels that way. It feels like he's just kind of throwing stuff in there because he doesn't know what else to do.
It still referenced Steven Spielberg for the story, but I'm assuming that's just the original.
Yeah, Spielberg's like, take my name off that shit.
well, and there's a scene in this movie that I know Corey would have loved. When the dad walks into the room and there's the little girl crying in the corner and it turns around, it's a horribly disfigured person.
Yeah.
Cookie cutter.
That
The
to me
exact
also,
same thing that we had criticized previously.
Yeah, the thing is, that didn't fit into the movie. Like, that scene out of everything was like, did not, because the poltergeist in that movie never really showed themselves as a human entity. So for them to do that just kind of didn't make sense for what was going on in the movie.
Well, then, it could have at least played into, did they bring back the actual girl or, a poltergeist pretending to be her? But, that wasn't even something they even tied into it at all.
That would have been something cool to play with.
But,
and then her eyes could have turned static and be like, I'm here.
Yeah.
Also, the ending of the movie was just hilariously okay,
abrupt.
what? They go to check out the other house, they leave, and then this weird music that does not fit in the tone of the rest of the movie at all. And just seems like a lame, insurance commercial of them driving away, mumbling together, happy family.
Yeah, not only that,
just horrible.
they're all, the dad became a high school baseball coach or something, or some type of little league baseball coach, because they're all wearing, baseball stuff, and they got the minivan with the baseball sticker on the back of it. And it's it turned to an Allstate commercial at the end of it.
Yeah, it was embarrassing to watch that scene.
yeah, it seemed like they're okay, well, we gotta wrap this up somehow. We don't want to recreate the scene from the first one.
They should have got Aaron Rodgers and did the discount double check.
Well, it just it had so much more CGI in it, where they blow the house up with supernatural forces, and it's just so much more unnecessary stuff. But I think we've gone on about this long enough because we're over an hour at this point.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad for this movie because I don't really think that, honestly, just from a film perspective, there's nothing that I can say that I really thought this movie did well.
Yeah.
There's not any scene where I'm this movie was dog trash for the most part, except for this one scene. And there's really not. There's no real redeeming. Sadly enough, the only redeeming scene in the movie as far as jump scares is a friggin' squirrel.
Which they stole from Christmas Vacation, the shot and everything, jumping right for the camera.
So they just like we said before, the movie is not devoid of entertainment. It's not memorable in any way.
So she had Chevy Chase in it then.
And it's just sad that this is probably going to be will probably be one of the highest grossing horror films of the year when all is said and done.
Oh, don't say that. We've had there's been some great horror films. Not even this year, last year, like Housebound, which they're remaking that too. But, that's another film. I just wish that would get more of its due.
But
I always think about that.
But instead, a movie like this will make $50 million. So
Yeah.
But I guess that just kind of wraps up this episode because I think we've covered this movie about as much as you can.
So we'll just say it. Don't go see it.
Yeah, don't go see it. And I think it's worth noting that this is the movie where it name dropped one actor probably the most, because I think Craig T. Nelson was a constant discussion piece throughout.
He was awesome in the original.
No, he was. Yeah, he's just awesome in general because he was coach.
Yeah.
And
well, we have the new coach show to look forward to. So
yeah, with Craig T. Nelson, maybe they can. I don't know. Yeah, but I think this movie is just something that don't go give him money. Don't pay to watch it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, and the iconic character from the original movie that played Tangina was Zelda Rubinstein.
Yes.
And they just couldn't even approach the iconic nature of that character and performance. So,
no.
Like I said, so I think that wraps up our discussion of this movie because there's not much more to talk about. So as always, thanks for listening. We'll have a new episode next week.
House by the video.